Another video series, this one on probably one of the most interesting topics in the sense of most people are interested in it, and that's weight loss. So let's talk about weight loss. How do you lose weight? It's just a simple balance between energy in and energy out, at least on the surface. Okay? On the energy in side, energy in. On the energy outside, you have your basal metabolic rate, you have your spontaneous physical activity, so how much activity you just do in the day, and then you have exercise, which is your planned activity, and then you have how much calories it costs to digest your food. So, when you eat, it costs calories to digest. That's a good thing, right? And we can use that to our advantage when we think about the topic of this particular video, which was, is a calorie a calorie? So is a calorie a calorie? Is it really that simple, just energy out? Yes and no is the answer. If you drink your carbs in, if you drink fruit drinks and soda and sports drinks in, that is a liquid source that's going to go through you very, very quickly. It's not going to distend your belly very much. Your gastric emptying, how fast your stomach dumps food out of it, is going to be fast. And so that actual logging of fullness is going to be much, much lower as if you ate something. So you ate a sweet potato. So if you ate that sweet potato, now it's going to distend your stomach, and those carbohydrates themselves biochemically are going to be slower digesting than you would have with the liquid source. And so in this particular example, a calorie is a calorie in terms of both the sweet potato, the carbs in that, and the sugar that's in the sports drink are going to have 4 calories per gram. But the pace in which they rush into your body and the fullness that they provide is going to be very, very different. So that sports drink is going to set you up to eat more food. In fact, you can have that insulin response and feeling of up and then down again. Then you want to eat more carbs again. And so you're setting yourself up for failure, basically. So a carb is a carb in terms of calories, but it's not in terms of how it's digested. Fiber is classified as a carbohydrate, a very different carbohydrate than sugar. So fiber is going to distend the belly, slow the gastric emptying, slow down the slow down the speed of the food bolus in your stomach and then through the intestine. Much better in terms of keeping you fuller and helping you to avoid overconsumption. I mean, when people ask me, I'm worried about the sugar in veggies, go for it. Eat as many vegetables as you want. See what happens, right? I mean, you're going to take care of, the fiber is going to take care of any overconsumption. Same with fruit. For the most part, if you overconsume fruit and vegetables, the fiber is going to take care of the overage, okay? And so, don't be too concerned about those two food groups. But again, going back to what we're talking about, though, is a calorie a calorie? Fiber is a carb, but it's a very different carb than the sugar that you find in your sports drink. So you want to err more on the side of fiber if you're trying to lose weight. You're trying to take advantage of blunting your hunger and making sure that you overconsume. You don't want to eat more, and so then your calories in on that side is lower. If you drink your carbs in, the calories in could be higher because you're not feeling full. Think about protein now. Protein is in whole form, not drinking it in all the time, even though that might be somewhat beneficial. It's not as beneficial as, beneficial to keeping you full. It's not as beneficial as eating actual food that has a lot of protein in it. So, eating an animal flesh source, that's going to be slower in your stomach. Gastric emptying is the slowest with protein. And so protein is going to also incur a lot of caloric expenditure because it costs a lot more energy to digest it. So you kind of have this double effect occurring with protein, besides the effect it's providing amino acids for muscle building. So it's kind of indirectly improving your basal metabolic rate, but it's also keeping you fuller, and it's improving what's called DIT, diet-induced thermogenesis. And so in other words, you burn more calories by eating protein. So protein is the cornerstone typically of any weight loss program. Right close next to it would be fiber, okay? Because both of those things are going to help you feel fuller. It's going to kill hunger and help overconsumption. So again, is a calorie a calorie? On the surface and on the numbers, of course. 4 calories per gram in protein, 4 grams per calorie in carbohydrates, but how they're metabolized and how fast they go through you is very much dependent upon how they're structured. Fat, same thing. Saturated fat is very different than mono and polyunsaturated fat. One of them is a much more healthy source of fat. One of them may cause a myriad of health disease, or disease conditions, diet-related disease conditions. So if you consume a lot of saturated fat, while that may be great to jack up your testosterone, it also can jack up a lot of other things like the increased likelihood of getting cardiovascular disease, as opposed to mono and polyunsaturated fat, which can help reduce it. Okay, so a calorie, again, is a calorie, but it goes back to, I think, a little bigger problem, or a bigger question is a macro a macro? Because the numbers in calories is the same. right? Fat is fat in terms of calories, carb is carb. It's more of, it's the wrong question, is a macro a macro? And the answer to that is no. Okay, a carb is not a carb is not a carb, you know, and how it's metabolized and what it does in your body. Okay, so we obviously want to err on the side. Doesn't mean sugar is bad. It just means it has to be used at the right time. It can be nice as a treat occasionally, but it also is great for workout carbs because it goes through you quickly and gets into your gut and gets where it need, you know, into your bloodstream and is used for energy. That can be fantastic. You don't want to eat a bunch of fiber necessarily when you're doing your workout, right? That'd be a bad idea. You know, otherwise, it might be a good idea to push more up the fiber side in meals not around the workouts. Workout meals may be better to have more complex carbohydrates, like you might find in that sweet potato, or fruit, which is balanced with fiber, and so it slows down. You get a complex carbohydrate type of action in your stomach. Now, you know, people talk about white rice and you know, these different types of high glycemic index foods that seemingly, like white rice has been demonized in some circles. It's a great food. If this is how you can slow it down though. So it's, you know, it's got a high glycemic number, meaning that it's going to go through faster than something that has a low glycemic number. Just eat protein with it. That's all you have to do. So just think about a cylinder full of food, you know, full of steak pieces. If you pour a liquid in there, it's going to go through there pretty quickly. But if you have rice poured in with those steak pieces, it's not just going to fall out of the container like, you know, pulling a liquid would. And so it's going to slow down the speed of digestion for that white rice. And so you get the benefits of white rice without the speed. Okay, that is a concern when you talk about high glycemic foods. So keep that in mind as well. When you do food combinations, you can start to adjust the speed in which you see food move through you. Okay. And again, protein is one of the best ways to do that. Fat is also another way to slow stuff down in your GI, your gastrointestinal tract. But protein would be your go-to one. So if you want to lose weight, burn more calories than you eat. Increase your activity. Exercise frequently. Okay. Increase your lean mass, which means when we talk about exercise, don't cardio yourself into the ground. We'll talk more about that. Lift weights because you increase your lean mass, and that's going to be better for metabolism. You see some of these world's strongest men competitors, how much food they eat in a day. It's absolutely ridiculous. It's because they're so big, and a lot of that bigness is muscle, right? Some of it isn't, but a lot of it is muscle, and the activities they're doing are so calorically demanding at their size that they burn a ton of calories. Okay, and that's what we're trying to set up when we talk about long-term weight loss, sustainable weight loss, is setting ourselves up in such a way that we can be successful. And one of those ways is to have lean mass, not just do cardio to evaporate all your lean mass. Then you have a hard time with weight maintenance because there's not a lot of metabolically active tissue left. You've destroyed it by doing a lot of cardio. Okay, so there's ways to manipulate these other things. Remember, I mentioned protein manipulating that diet-induced thermogenesis, so the caloric expenditure involved with eating food. So these are all modifiable things. Again, on the intake side, the type of macro you eat, if it has a lot of fiber in it, as a carb source, it's going to be a much better way of slowing down how many calories you get, as opposed to if you're eating, drinking in your carbohydrates. All right. So there's hopefully some helpful tips to get started to lose weight. The numbers and all those other things are, we can talk about those as we go, but if you can just start there, looking at your diet and say, how many carbs am I drinking in? Am I eating an adequate amount of protein? How much is that? We'll talk about that. Kind of fat sources am I eating? That would be a great place to start. And then on the other side, looking at the training side of it, am I getting enough physical activity? Am I physically active? Even if I'm exercising, am I active in my day? Can I be more active? Every little bit counts. We'll see you in the next video.